Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. As always, we are so excited that you tuned in to hear our show. Jana, how's things down in Nashville?
Good. You know,
Good.
It's actually we're pretty warm right now, so it's
that's
from
good.
50s. You know,
That's always good. It's always good for Nashville. Love it. Hey, Jana, we have an awesome guest today. I'm very excited. Jeff Oak is with us, and we're going to be having some great conversation with Jeff. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here, Jeff and Jana. Thank you.
So, Jeff, what we like to do is to have our guests tell us a little bit about them, give us your background and how you got to where you're at today, because you could probably do it way better than we could if we had to read something. So please
Sure
enlighten our guests.
Okay. I've been married 38 years to Carol. We have 2 adult children. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but as I shared with you before the show, my parents both grew up on Illinois farms. And so there's a little bit of that Midwestern set of values and approach to the world that I grew up with as part of my upbringing. I spent my career, I ran a small medical facility very early in my career, but I spent the vast majority of my career for working for very large companies as the chief ethics officer. I have actually formal training in ethics. Didn't anticipate serving that role. The role actually didn't exist when I was doing my graduate work. And I was really privileged to work with some extraordinary organizations in the mid-Atlantic region of the US. And when I finished that stint, the last company that I was with, we were fortunate to go through a merger to create a very, very large company that spanned the Midwest and the Middle Atlantic region. I was interested in, what's next for me? Do I go into another big role, a big company role? And that's when Vistage and I mutually found each other. And I have been an executive coach and absolutely loving it since that time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And so Vistage, for our listeners, give us a little background about Vistage. I know what Vistage is, but for the listeners, let them know what that's about.
Sure. We've been around for over 65 years. During that time, a lot has changed in the world and in communication and whatnot, but the essential core business proposition of business has not changed. We help CEOs step away from the day-to-day to connect with other CEOs to experience and be challenged by and nurtured by divergent perspectives. So it all starts with a peer group of non-competing companies, up to 16 companies. The model, that's at the centerpiece of the model. I meet with that group of CEOs. I actually have 4 groups. I meet with those groups once a month for a full day for a learning laboratory is the way I like to think about it. We're rolling up our sleeves, working on the business. I also meet with those CEOs privately once a month in executive coaching, where we dig into their individual issues. And the other parts of the platform that I think are relevant, at those group meetings, we have thought leaders, speakers, workshop leaders who really challenge everyone's thinking. We're all about challenging in a caring environment, but challenging each other's perspectives in ways of doing. We have our own research function. A lot of times that prompts action on the part of our members. We have a global network that provides support to those companies that have either aspirations or existing businesses around the world. We operate in 40 countries, and we sponsor events that are often very inspirational, very informative, and really motivate folks to really engage in their own leadership, to become better leaders and to make better decisions, and in the end of the day, to get better outcomes.
That's great.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So, the interesting fact that you threw out there was that you've been around 65 years. I didn't realize that Vistage has been around that long.
Yeah.
So 65 years ago, it wasn't
Yes.
a prominent thing to have a coach like it is today.
Yes.
So that had to be, think about that. If you had a coach back in those days, it was almost like you were saying that you were weak
Yes.
to a certain degree. So it's interesting that they've been around that long.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the origin story is both extremely inspirational and extremely ordinary. Our founder, a guy by the name of Bob Nurse, noticed that many CEOs were asking the same questions, dealing with the same challenges. And he had this very simple idea. Rather than me bringing them together and being the expert and solving their problems and being the guy with all the answers, how can we harvest the insights of the group itself?
Mm-hmm.
And that fundamental insight of bringing people together in a safe space, a non-competing space, a space that's governed by norms for behavior and norms for participation, things like respect and confidentiality. Confidentiality is paramount. And caring about each other, we have a phrase we call carefrontation, create a caring environment.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of that caring environment, really ask questions of each other that no one else is asking us. There's a lack of fear of offending, and but it's really, hey, I think you're making an assumption here that's false, or I think there's a self-limiting belief that's really holding you back. I think you got some blind spots. These are the kind of challenging conversations that we have in the context of a caring environment. And the seeds of that were really part of that very first group that gathered. There are actually two individuals who were in that initial group whose companies they are no longer living, but the second and third generation of those initial companies are still Vistage members. The
Wow,
company
that's great.
having a more than 60-year-long tenure with Vistage. One of the things that I appreciate enormously about the Vistage model is because we have norms for the group and create a safe space. Trust grows very, very rapidly, and with
Mm-hmm.
trust comes self-disclosure and candor. I mean, it's not uncommon for whether it's in a group meeting or in my one-to-ones for someone to say, I've never shared this with anyone, or I've never asked this, or no one has ever asked me this question. And the level of self-disclosure and trust and engagement, the groups in a quite rapid fashion grow very close with each other and really rely on each other for that support, those outside perspectives, the viewpoints that they're not getting from anyone else. I view my role is not to um, provide people answering their questions, but I view my role as the facilitator of the group to really question their answers. And are they really thinking about all the things that they need to be thinking about?
That's so interesting to us because Jeff and I talk about this so much about trust and communication. Those are two of our biggest platforms when we're coaching, just in general
Yes.
in our business model. But it's interesting that 65 years ago this was happening, just because again, that's probably why it's hung around for 65 years.
Yes.
Because again, like Jeff said, that wasn't, you had a big old boss that pretty much told you how to do things. So I like
Yes.
that you say that, Jeff, that you're more of a facilitator. What have you found to what changes have you seen, let's say in the last 10 years, 8 to 10 years, right before the pandemic, let's say, or even a few years before the pandemic? What changes have you seen in the issues that businesses are having, or that these CEOs or C-suite people are having?
Yeah. Thank you, Jana. So some issues, of course, endure the test of time. But the way those issues show up or present themselves to companies changes quite a bit. We have a lot of discussion about succession planning. One of the things I really appreciate about your website and this podcast is the focus on growing your people as a way of growing your company. And part of growing people is really meeting them where they are. You've got some great stuff on generational differences. This is the first time in human history that 5 different generations are having to work together in the workplace. And we've never been in this position before.
Right.
And that creates lots of challenges and lots of opportunities, in terms of the different sets of outlooks, the different value sets, different preferences for communication, different ways of thinking about leadership and thinking about organizations. So navigating a multi-generational workforce is certainly a very common issue. Closely related to that is succession planning. We have a lot of people who are seeking to exit their businesses. It could be a family business where they're passing it off to the next generation. It could be cultivating the entire next generation of leadership, are very common issues. One interesting evolution, we have some members who are very wired, and well, everyone is wired in an entrepreneurial fashion, but entrepreneurship, as you know, can take many different forms.
Mm.
And we have some folks who say, I want to grow this company. I want to sell it. I want to buy another one, grow it, sell it. I want to buy it, grow it, sell it. And an interesting evolution is the emergence of legacy related questions for those who maybe haven't thought in those terms. So I have a lot of members who are really thinking about, what am I going to leave behind? Not only in my company, but in the lives of the people I touch, in the families that our company helps, make an honest living, make a good living. But I have a lot of people asking, what do I want to be remembered for within my company, among my family, and my community?
Yeah.
Are really important questions. Those are some of the recurring ones. We've got our garden variety HR issues, our garden variety operational. How do I scale in a way that's sustainable is a very big issue for us, for our members, a very, very big interest of our members. But we could probably name an issue. We've talked about it.
Oh, yeah.
Another one that's a very common theme that I'm sure you can relate to is, for most of my members, they are stewarding what for most of them is their most precious asset, their most precious thing other than their family, and that is their business.
Mhm.
And with that becomes long hours, really long hours. And I have a lot of my members who are really seeking to take more control of their lives and create time for their more time for their families, for their spouses, for their kids. They don't want to miss the games the way they always have.
Mhm.
They want to have a relationship with their kids. That's a very, very common theme, and some very, very powerful conversations where there's a lot of vulnerability. People seek to live the life that they espouse and that they value. And so getting alignment between the values they have and the life that they're leading is a very common issue.
And don't you find, Jeff, that that's sort of newer? I know that when I'm doing some keynoting and working with some of these clients, the younger generations sort of demand that now.
Yes.
Well, that's a little bit different than the baby boomers and the Gen Xers. They would work 80 hours a week just because that was part of the structure of the business. If you work until the work is done. And
Absolutely.
I find that these Gen Zers and the new Alpha generation, which is the real young ones that are just now, excuse me, in the workforce, they want life work balance. They want to feel like they have control over their hours and what they're putting into the business. They're very dedicated, but they want control. They're very entrepreneurial, but they also want that balance. And I think that goes back to the mental health issues and a lot of the things that we're seeing more and more that are,
Absolutely. I noticed you had a podcast on mental health issues. That's a very active topic. And just navigating some of the complexities with that, it can be very difficult. One of the value pieces that I touched on is at those group meetings, we bring in outside speakers. We have access to about 1,250 speakers on every topic that you can imagine. And we recently had a keynote address at one of our events by a Vistage speaker who's an expert on multi-generational issues. And when you reflect on, what were the key current events that were going on in the various generations, What were the developments in communication? What were the developments in transportation? Um, what were the various things that people were living through, the significant events, to go through World War II as my dad did. Um, and millennials and Gen Zs, the formative events were, the Great Recession
Yes.
or COVID, or 9/11. These things are powerfully influential in shaping how people communicate, how they navigate the world, what they think good leadership looks like. And it's
Yes.
tough being a business owner when you've got three, four, in some cases, five generations of the workplace who have different conceptions how
Absolutely.
organizations ought to operate and how leaders ought to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you find that, especially, coaching CEOs after COVID and everything went, more stay at home or hybrid or whatever, were those a lot of big challenges for your groups?
Very much so, very much so. And it challenged the way we got together, right?
That's what I asked too. Yeah.
Ours is
Yeah.
ours is fundamentally an in-person model because we're really engaging with each other and as I said, rolling up our sleeves and working on the business rather than just in it. And so we had to gather by Zoom for a long period of time, and that created just a completely different dynamic. But yes, the emergence of the hybrid workforce and how people think differently. After COVID, there were a lot of discoveries that there's a bunch of work you can get done remotely, and there remains a body of work um, that sometimes can't get done remotely. I mean, I have some businesses, they are in-person businesses. And so the prospect or the possibility even of a hybrid workforce, when you're running a coffee shop,
Yeah. Right.
serving
Yes.
coffee to people, there's no hybrid option to that. But there are many with the growth of thought, value propositions, services that are really related on brain power, not necessarily
Right.
physical presence, um, where there's more and more demand. People have discovered that they like walking their kids to the bus
Mm-hmm.
or going to the game, little league or what have you, and they're not quite so ready to give that up as quickly. And I think there are some very healthy dimensions to that, and there are probably some dimensions to that create a lot of challenges for how do we deliver goods and services? How do we manage people? And I think the jury is still out on how all of that is going to settle out.
I was just going to say, I think the jury is still out, and we've talked about this. We've had a few people on that have said, some of these smaller businesses, we are expecting people to get back to work. Like I know, and even some larger ones here in Nashville, I know Amazon, this is headquartered here, and they are, as of January 2025, everybody's back at work 5 days a week, kind of a thing. So, and then there are some of these businesses, I think, that are trying to figure out, kind of like Jeff said, that hybrid model where you pick 2 days a week that you're in the office. Is it a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday? So at least there's some staff within the office or some people in the office. But I think the jury's out too. And I also think it depends on the business. Do you find that as well, Jeff? I think it depends on the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some businesses lend themselves to that. I mean, I have several businesses in my groups. They are and they always have been 100% remote.
Yeah. Wow.
And so COVID did not require. I mean, certainly there were adjustments that they had to make, but their business model was built. They have people all over the world, in some cases, delivering their products and their service, or primarily their services. But yes, a lot of variation in really what the business is all about. One of the things that I encourage my members to think about, those members who have some ability for a hybrid workforce, um, is not to resort to what I call the butts in seats philosophy. Well, if people are in their seats and they're in the office, they're getting stuff done. and that's a good thing. Therefore, everybody should come and, sit in the chair. I really encourage people to think about the nature of the work. For example, there are some tasks that can be done asynchronously. You have someone working on something at night, someone working on the same thing in the morning, and the nature of the work, it's possible to do it in an asynchronous manner, not doing it at the same time.
Right.
There are other types of work that really require, synchronous work that has to be done at the same time in real time. And also the distinction between work that is solitary and work that can really only be accomplished most effectively in a team. Don't just think about butts in chairs. Think about the nature of the work. What can be done synchronously? What can't be? What can be done by an individual or a series of individuals operating independently? And what things really require conversation, collaboration? Um, not every thing that needs to be fixed is a nail, and not everything requires a hammer.
Yeah. Right.
So I think by being thoughtful, I think can increase understanding.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we have to think about as CEOs and C-level executives too is some people excel at different times of the day, right?
Yes.
So like give me from 7 to 2 and I'm rocking for you, right?
Yes.
Make me do something after 3 o'clock and you're going to get about 25%,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Where one of my clients, she can't have a conversation before 11 because she's up till
Yes.
midnight or 2 o'clock, right?
Yes.
But I think as leaders that we need to make sure that we understand that part of the people that are working for us as well, because if we could take advantage of their maximum time that they like to work, it could be so much more beneficial.
Yes, I think I appreciate what you said, Jeff, and what comes up for me by your comments is one of the shifts, for example, of the traditionalist generation, those who grew up in World War II, and the baby boomers. The company was first, always came first. And either you deal with it, you toughen up, and you do what's best for the company 100% of the time without any regard for any other things, or you go looking elsewhere. And I think the relationship between the employee and the organization, and what that covenant represents and how it's navigated, I think there are certain aspects of giving certain very positive aspects relating to being more mindful, organizations being more mindful about the concrete reality of their employees. Yet I think, like pendulums, if that goes to such an extreme, that can be problematic.
Yeah.
And I think the best businesses, are really seeking to navigate that polarity, that it's not one or the other. It's not the company at all costs or the individual's needs and preferences at all costs. There's a middle ground there that's challenging to find, but important to look for.
Well, and I think there's so much variety in that, like you said, Jeff, depending on the business. And I think we are to be honest, I hear it from our clients, we are at that other pendulum swing where some of these younger generations think that, well, it's all about me, and what is important to me is my personal time as well. And so I think we have to find that middle ground. And I think the key is setting up these policies and expectations and procedures from the get-go, but not making it like it used to be, where 80 hours a week, or you live and die the business, but certainly having something that is tangible and is explanatory and is very clear for the employee when they come in. This is how our business works, and this is what we need from you.
Yeah.
We're going to work with you as much as we can, but we also have policies and procedures that historically have been in place that are working, that keep us, keep the doors open. So
Yeah.
I think there is that happy medium that we've got to find still.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate what you say, Jana, about finding that middle ground. another topic that your comments bring up for me is um, how do we go about doing that?
Yes.
And I think on one hand, it's very important for us to be comfortable in our own skin, no matter what generation we're a part of. We're shaped by values. We've been shaped by events. We've been shaped by patterns of communication and whatnot. So to be comfortable in our own skin, no matter what generation we are, and to be curious about other generations. I have encouraged my members to do a reverse mentoring program. Find someone in a generation different from yours, younger than yours, and ask that person to mentor you. How is it that you think about technology? How is it that you think about what good leadership looks like? How is it that you think about the purpose of an organization is? And to bring a mindset of curiosity to other generations, and to learn, to take a learning mindset, I think can facilitate these very, very turbulent evolutions in the workforce.
Love that and agree with it totally. I mean, it's just what a great way to kind of give back to, just understand the two different generations. I think that's really amazing. Hey, Jeff, we have to kind of close things down here, but this has been a wonderful conversation where we could talk for, as Jan and I do with most of our guests, we could talk for an hour, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
and just keep going on it, but it's been great. Thanks for enlightening us on Vistage and some of the things that you do, but just the topical things. I think that's the important part. What are people suffering with?
Sure. And I've got some freebies for your listeners.
Awesome.
If I could just do that. So we have a landing page that's specifically for your podcast and your audience. It's www.vistage.com/pull the chute.
Awesome.
All one word.
Thanks.
So vistage.com/pull the chute.
Appreciate that so much.
Yes.
And if people want to get a hold of you, Jeff, how can they do that?
My probably the best thing is LinkedIn. Jeff Oak, JEFFOAK, is the easiest one to remember.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and just sharing your insight. We appreciate it so much. I'm sure our listeners do too. So
really appreciate the opportunity.
to all our listeners out there, Jan and I always appreciate your feedback. We continually get emails from you saying that you like this interview or that interview. Keep those coming. We appreciate that so much. Until the next time, folks, stay safe and be healthy.